Meanwhile, as we've been telling you, the U.S. election day is less than a day away, and more than 77 million Americans have already cast their ballots. That's nearly half of the 155 million who voted in the last presidential election. Remember, the last election was during COVID. In North Carolina, nearly 4.5 million voters have already voted, setting an early in-person voting record. In Georgia, 4 million people, and in Pennsylvania, 1.7 million people cast early ballots. 9 states have seen more than 50% of eligible voters already cast their ballot. Republican candidate Donald Trump is facing off against Democratic candidate Kamala Harris for the top post. Now, apart from main candidates, there are also a few lesser-known candidates in the fray who are running as third-party candidates or as independents. Physician Jill Stein is running for the Oval Office as the Green Party candidate. She has been polling nearly 1% of votes in opinion polls. The Libertarian Party has fielded a politician and activist Chaz Oliver. Oliver says he became politically active as an opponent of the Iraq War and described himself armed and gay. Political activist also Phil Osfer, academic Cornell West, initially a Green Party candidate, is also contesting the polls as an independent candidate. Cornell West is making a bid to attract more progressive, Democratic-leaning voters. And then there's Claudia De La Cruz, a socialist candidate. She's running on the ticket of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. All right, for more on all of this, we are now being joined by Joanna LeBlanc, political analyst, national security law analyst, and foreign relations expert. Joanna, welcome back to WION, and great to talk to you. Harris and Trump are making a final last-minute push before Election Day. What do you make of their campaign pitches in these final days and hours?
Good morning. It is always a pleasure joining you here from Washington, D.C. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. These are the last days. Tomorrow is the big day, November 5th, where Americans will go and cast their ballots. But as you said earlier, more than 70 million people have already voted. But historically, what we do know is that early voters tend to be Republicans. So at this time, I think candidate like Harris in particular, she's trying her best to appeal to voters. Like, you hear her say things like, me on my first day of work, I will have a to-do list for the American people. Whereas Mr. Trump will have a list of enemies that he wants to attack. So trying to make it clear about the distinction between she and Mr. Trump. But I think ultimately what's going to matter at the end of the day when it comes to this election, because it's so tight, is that it's going to be the voter turnout. How many people actually go out and vote tomorrow? You have places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, that Harris must win in order to secure the presidency. So the numbers are looking very close. So I think that most of the Harris and Mr. Trump, they're doing their best during the last days to ensure that the American voters understand where they really stand on certain policy issues.
Okay, Joanna, please do stay with me. We also have our correspondent, Siddhan Sebel, live from Washington with us. Siddhan, great to see you. Can you talk to us about what the mood in Washington is in these final days and possibly hours to the election? What are you hearing and seeing, talking to people out there? I understand you're in front of the White House, too.
From Washington, Susan, yes, the mood on the ground is something which is about enthusiasm about the upcoming election. I've been speaking to a number of voters, both the American and Indian Americans as well. But if I talk about the security situation on the ground, it has been increased significantly. In fact, if you can see the White House behind me, you can see number of fences being put up, also number of establishments around and inside Washington has have put up wooden planks just to safeguard themselves from any protests if that happen post-elections, any violence that happens post-election. There is a fear among the people here on the ground. In fact, roads have been closed starting today, given the fact that Kamala Harris will be at the Harvard University, and the roads around that place have been closed as well. So the security is something that has been increased. The authorities don't want to take any chances. Of course, the mood is upbeat. Everyone is counting hours now. And of course, this is a neck-on-neck battle between the Republican and the Democrat nominees.
All of the polls almost in the margin of error. Siddhan, you're absolutely right. Neck and neck indeed. Please stay with me. Joanna, how do you see the Arab American voters dealing with Kamala Harris, trying to woo them back, as many really thinking that they should possibly back Donald Trump to get some sort of peace deal going on in the Middle East? What is Harris doing?
Well, historically, the United States position towards Israel, whether you're Republican or Democrat, has been quite consistent. So when it comes to the Middle East, whether you have a Trump presidency or a Harris presidency, I don't think you're going to see much shift in policy because, again, Israel serves as a key ally to the United States in the Middle East. Israel is the United States' eyes and ears in the region. Israel helps to ensure that there's peace and security, not just in the region, but also in the homeland. So, and the U.S. has spent an extreme amount of dollars in supporting Israel defense. But the unfortunate reality for Harris is that she's the vice president of the United States, while there is a conflict between Gaza and Israel. But ultimately, the policy position will more than likely remain the same, irrespective of who wins the presidency as it relates to Israel.
And I thought it was really interesting, Joanna, that we're seeing different ads being aired in Michigan, notably in Dearborn and those Muslim majority regions, and then in other states where they have a higher concentration of Jewish Americans. These dwelling ads on the part of the Harris campaign, do you think they'll pay off? Or does it seem like they don't have a single message to go with?
Yeah, I don't think that, because what this community want, in particular places like Michigan, where you have a group of uncommitted voters who are just not happy with the handling of the Gaza and Israel issue, they want a policy shift, right? And unfortunately, that is not going to happen. So I think that while Harris tries to appeal to those voters, but the reality is that the U.S. still continues to support Israel, rightfully so, because Israel has the right to defend itself from any external threats and terrorist activities. So while I think Vice President Harris is doing all that she can to appeal to those voters, I think ultimately those voters are saying, yes, you're saying one thing, but when it comes to policy, there has not been a policy shift. And many of them have remained consistent in not supporting a Harris presidency, but also not supporting Mr. Trump either, and going with the Green Party candidate instead, or not voting at all, which I think ultimately could potentially have an impact on whether or not VP Harris could win the presidency. And this is unprecedented, right? Because it's the first time since the Vietnam War where we see that a foreign policy issue could have an implication as it relates to the presidency here in the United States.
Yeah, that's so true. And my final question to you, Siddhan, is I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you've been hearing about this event in Philadelphia tonight, where Kamala Harris is pulling in many A-listers like Lady Gaga, Ricky Martin, and Oprah Winfrey, sort of reminiscent of 2016, where Hillary Clinton did the same on the eve of Election Day. What are you hearing about that? And what is the power of celebrity in this year's presidential election?
Well, Celebrities and politics go hand in hand, and this year's elections here in the United States is no different. We saw Jennifer Lopez being roped in as well, and today's event will be a star-studded event in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, which of course is a battleground state. In fact, most of the most important battleground state of the 7 battleground states. In fact, it is the first among equals in many senses, and the 19 electoral votes essentially decide the fate of who will be the next resident of this place behind me, the White House. The race, of course, has started, and everyone is trying to do anything possible, whether it's roping in celebrities. Of course, we know in the past, Republicans roped in comedians. That, of course, did not end very well with the garbage versus garbage comment. But all in all, both candidates will be trying to do their blitz in these swing states, the 7 swing states, which includes, of course, Pennsylvania. And this is an event which will be closely watched as to what she says in her last poll pitch before America goes to elections.
Well, we'll have to see if the plan of the Democratic Party to rope in all these celebrities is going to pay at the end of the day, and we'll know very soon. Thank you so much, Siddon Sybil, our correspondent in Washington, D.C., in front of the White House, and Joanna LeBlanc. Joanna, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining us.
Likewise, take care.